Spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News in the Morning. My name is Mr. Henry, Mr. David Shine Thompson, sitting across me there in the hat and the glasses and everything else, the beautiful background as you're seeing. How you doing this morning, buddy? That's what I'm talking about. Hey, man. It's a great day.
There we go.
Dude.
I'm feeling great this morning, man. How you doing today?
Yes, sir. Doing well, floating around in space back here, man. I'm loving the background I got going. We have people comment in the chat section already. Daniel's in there. Another Daniel's in there, both Herrera and Blanchett. Hey, shout out to our buddy Daniel Herrera, man. Kid passed the bar. He got accepted to an LLM program. Like, he's doing big things out near Knoxville way, man. Like, you know, let's shout out some members, get them praise, get them some hype, get some encouragement going, man.
Whoop. Yeah,
big
man.
Stuff, dude.
Hey, I always say, you know, in my volunteer meetings, I always say, you know, we want to be the kind of people that congratulate people when things go well. You know, that's what we need. That's what people need in their life. They need people to say, man, good on you. You know?
Right.
And good on you for all you out there listening today, paying attention to the world, and hanging out with your community. You know, so thanks for joining us today.
Hey, and let's do a bit of the greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment here. That's part of the show that we're bringing up President Trump in a second. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation. Sean, I think they're saying they you got a screen share covering both of you.
Yeah, I know.
Hopefully I fixed that.
There's always like 50 million things to do. You know,
hey man,
in the real radio world, I'd have a thing here with like faders and buttons to push, like analog, which I would much prefer. If I could take my little Akai MPK Mini and make it so these buttons did stuff for me for the show. I can't do that, though. I can't use that as a MIDI. I have to do it all digitally, and I can't.
Holler at your boy Daniel Blanchett in the chat section here. If anybody can figure it out for us, it's your boy Daniel.
There you
He's
go.
one of your folks, man.
That's right.
Yes, I did the computer
Hey,
stuff.
and good morning,
By the
Daniel.
way,
good morning, all y'all. Love you guys.
Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment here. If you got anything that you're happy about, that you want some shout outs about, that you just want to let us know about, that you're like, yes, good day. We're having good times, man. Let us know about this stuff. We already let you know about Daniel Herrera passing the bar, getting his LLM stuff. I think antitrust. Is that right, Daniel? Some of the stuff you're going to be practicing? Big stuff, dude. I don't even try and understand it. Also, greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment here. If you got anything you need help with, any financial concerns, any philosophical concerns, spiritual concerns, mental concerns, physical concerns, whatever it might be, let us know. Send a direct message to myself, David Shine Thompson over here, or to the Real News inbox as well. We'll see if we can help with that. I always try and plug this when I can, Sean. If you know of any businesses that are trying to innovate during this particular period, if you know any businesses that are out there trying to stay alive or just need some help, get that word to us. Bring them out here for the community we're building. We're trying to put them on this program, do the right thing, showing people how we can innovate during this time period. I'm putting Sean on the spot here a little bit, though. What about you, buddy? How you doing, man? You got any shout-outs? You got any praise, concerns, anything going on?
Oh, man, it's just I appreciate, you for getting up every day and doing this show with me and all the great prep you do. And I want to give a shout out to all our great friends and viewers for doing the good work they're doing by just keeping one foot in front of the other and trying to live normal life. So I'll give shout outs to all of them. And I also want to give a shout out to my fiance's company. For continuing to employ her, because that's wonderful. Not everybody is being able to do that. I don't remember the name of the business. It's something to do with plants. But anyway, I'll look it up before the end of the show and give them a proper shout out. But but they know who they are, and I want to say thank you to them. And anybody who's continued to employ people when it hasn't been, let's say, immediately profitable, like employing people, like giving people hours because you want to keep them as employees, or giving them hours because you know that they will be more valuable to you when this is over. And you'd rather keep that person. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to all the businesses that are trying to keep people, making it work, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I'm right there with you. Shout out to all the businesses that are trying to make it work. Shout out to businesses that are trying to innovate, keep their people alive, keep their people employed, even when it may not be in the best business interest to do so right now. By the way, quick thing here. We're going to touch this a little bit later in the show, but at the top of the description section, Sean does a great job of posting the show notes there every single morning. So in the description section of these live videos, you can see everything we're going to be talking about today, show notes ahead of time, some of the prep we do. It's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, kind of fun for everyone.
And more because we never get to all of it. So like,
that's a great point, actually.
If you want to just like catch all what Mr. Henry thinks is important in the world every day, it's in the description.
Or that's a reason to avoid it entirely, possibly.
No. That's, I mean, obviously, if they're coming here to hang out, they care about what you might think is important. So
yeah,
check
I guess
that
that's
out in
true.
the description. It's not always formatted correctly because it comes from like a Word document or a document style into that description area. But I think y'all are all real smart, and you can figure it out. You can copy and paste the links and things like that. You got this. So
one of those things in particular, I'll touch on this later on the show if we have time. It's the thing at the very top. It's help fighting this national property tax increase, man. I'm telling you, if y'all click on that little bit.ly link there, it'll take you to a simple thing to fill out. They're talking about anywhere, it's about as high as a 40% property tax increase possibly. And the reason why I bring this up, especially for our East Tennessee folks, is look, it's reasonable to assume, dare I even say we might presume, that if something passes in Nashville, Knoxville might get wind of that and think about doing the same thing. Knox City, okay? Let's be clear here. I'm talking about cities and not the county government. So sign that for us, click on that thing, let your voice be heard. I actually received a message back from one of our at-large council members over here in Nashville. If we have time, I'll get to what their response is. It's pretty interesting, actually.
So
breaking it down a little bit.
I'm confused. I thought you were talking about a story, but now you're not. You're talking about a link you posted on Real News.
Yeah, just that petition. You can sign up there. It's a letter that goes directly to the Metro City Council members here in Nashville to say, hey, now is probably not the best time for a property tax increase. We personally believe that if you're going to do anything to try and, as far as it pertains to budgetary matters, look at cutting some discretionary spending, look at cutting some wasteful spending first, and possibly only then can we talk about any sort of tax increase. And even then a property tax increase, especially right now, dude, we just can't handle it. Like, it's just not the time to be doing a property tax increase, okay? If there ever is a time to be doing a property tax increase. So that's just something I want to put attention to. But to start the program, see the show notes there, Knox County Mayor, our own Glenn Jacobs, buddy. I keep saying that. He's not mine anymore. I wish he was. But whatever.
Hey,
y'all's
he
own
can
Glenn
always
Jacobs.
be yours, I guess.
He will always be mine.
He'll always be your Knox County Mayor.
He put out a detailed plan for what's a strategic and phased reopening of businesses as we get closer and closer to this time period that we're talking about, reintroduction of people back into society, reintroduction of normalcy, and opening the economy back up. And I think, dude, this is not just timely, it's exceedingly important right now to focus on some of these things, because we were just talking yesterday, Sean, where we're not between ourselves of, dude, it's one thing to say just open the economy back up, but that frightens a lot of people. Whether it's legitimate fear or not, it doesn't matter. It simply frightens some people because for the last 2 weeks, we've been talking these dire apocalyptic scenarios where every day you go on the news and you hear something about, we've never seen anything like this before. We've never had shutdowns like this before. We've never had sports go off air before. So how are you just going to throw us back in there with the potential that I could get sick again? There has to be a plan or a phase in or something. Somebody has to take charge here, man. And whether this is the answer or not, I don't necessarily know, but I do know at least somebody's trying to start that conversation. A little bit of touch and basis here, Sean, and whenever you want to stop me, jump in and let me know. He's talking.
I ain't ever gonna. You don't stop, Mr. Henry. Don't stop ever.
Don't stop. He's talking a phased reopening, obviously, here. Here we go. All businesses, quote, should continue promoting frequent and thorough hand washing and provide workers, customers, and visitors a place to wash their hands if soap and running water are not immediately available. Alcohol-based sanitizer should be required. Workers to stay at home if they are sick. Ask employees to do health checks by taking and recording their temperatures before coming to work or entering the workplace. Pause real quick. Again, Sean, let me pause it one more time. The way that Mayor Jacobs is going to handle a lot of this stuff, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you fall in this ideological line, is going to be based upon hoping and praying that you're going to do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. A lot of this sounds voluntary, buddy, because it pretty much is going to be voluntary. Do the right thing for the right thing's sake. I wouldn't expect anything
different from Glenn Jacobs. I would expect things to be voluntary.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, man.
And I only say that because some of the other stuff that I'm about to mention here in a second, primarily saying requiring any employee who has contacted or had contact with someone who tests and has tested positive for COVID-19 to self-quarantine according to the health department guidance. And that's why I'm saying, buddy, this is voluntary language, okay? Now, requiring any employee to do so, okay, yes, they're going to have a private corporation and require their employees to do something that is not a state actor. You know what I'm saying, Sean? Meaning it's not a government entity that is forcing you, coercing you by way of some, I don't know, enforcement mechanism, right?
Through force, yeah.
Through force, yeah. Thanks, man. Through force. They're not going to force you to stay in your home, right? County Mayor Glenn Jacobs is essentially saying an employer can obviously ask you to stay at home, but again, it's going to be voluntarily based if you want to keep your employment or whatever else. Self-quarantine, this is coming straight out of the South Korea playbook, I believe, okay? That's where a lot of this stuff is coming from, and that's one of the best ways to handle it we've seen so far is if you can get a handle on who might have had contact with someone that's tested positive, you can get a handle on that from the very beginning and do something voluntarily about it. And if employers, let me say this too, Shine, if employers are willing to work with people to allow that to continue to happen, employers are willing to work with people to allow them to say go out for 2 weeks and still maintain their job afterwards, I think that would be a best case scenario there. Goes on to say for as long as possible.
I've actually heard about people last week that were having trouble, like they had to go to work even once the order had come down. They were being told they had to go to work. By the end of the week, the company, I think it was 3 people I've heard from, the companies were able to set up like a 2-week window and say, you can work from home like 90% of the time. You got to come in to do the one thing you can't do from home. You know, some places it's about security, right? And then they make sure that only like one employee for that whole area comes in that one day, and then they clean it afterwards and stuff. So people are, even though it's cumbersome, it's annoying, people are having to come up with like really interesting solutions, especially with security, with people working at home. If what you're working on is people's money or private information or things like that. Companies are trying to do it even before this is coming out. So hopefully people are learning from the innovation. So when these guidelines are come out, it's not everyone starting at square one, and we can actually do it. You know, we can do it as a, like, not just 10% of the people doing it really well and everyone else kind of, you know, haphazardly wandering through it. We actually do it and execute it properly. Well, that would be really nice.
I was actually talking to my parents last night about the same thing, and they told me something that I thought was extremely profound considering this phase we're about to enter. This phase we're about to enter of people being reintroduced back to businesses again. My parents said, look, to be honest, I'm going to go to the business that I trust to keep me safe. Do you hear what I'm saying, Shine? Like, the tradable commodity of this future world 2.0 is going to be trust.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you will buy an inferior product, or you will sit through inferior service, seemingly inferior service, right? If you trust the individuals to keep you safe or keep you healthy or whatever else. And that's simply where we're at. And I think that's a little bit of what Glenn Jacobs is noticing here is, look, man, those businesses that are willing to innovate to accommodate that new required level of trust, because that is the business that's being dealt in, those are the ones that are not only going to be able to survive, they will thrive going forward. But
yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And trust is so important. It will be the commodity of the future for a number of reasons, for so many reasons, but definitely in a time of crisis. Trust means more than green. You know what I mean? And this will probably be the case when we start doing things again. the desire to feel safe will mean more than dollars. You know, you could save $100, but who cares if you could get sick, you know, or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly,
especially if someone is showing that their environment, they don't really care. You know what I mean? People showing or trying to show that they care will be incredibly valuable as a product services company. I'd also say in the employee market too, like people that are, I mean, there will be, once they open things up, there'll be a lot of people looking for jobs. There'll be a lot of people needing different kinds of employees because of how much change is happening in the market. There's new needs. There's new ways to do things. But I think in the employee market, and hopefully it stays kind of an employee's market, even with all this unemployment, who knows? But either way, I think people will be making their decisions about where they work based on how seriously the company is taking their safety precautions. And I already know a guy who quit a job and got another one because his company didn't have any plan for if someone got sick. They didn't have any plan at all. Like not a, you know, a lot of places they say, you know, if you get sick, don't come to work. Just take 2 weeks off, you know, make sure something like that. No plan at all. And he quit immediately because he felt like, and he lost $7 an hour on that. So that's just that's anecdotal, but I think that's very typical of the market you'll see for the consumer market and the employee market is people will be willing to either pay more money or take less money in order to feel safe, in order to trust that the transaction is good for them. Like you were saying, that commodity of trust. I know there's a little bit of anecdotal stuff there, but worth bringing up, I think.
No, absolutely.
It'll be a different market.
It will be a completely different market, man. And again, go check this out for yourself. County Mayor Glenn Jacobs goes on to explain quite a bit here of what all businesses should adopt. Obviously, some restaurants, some business-specific things or industry-specific things he mentions here as well. I won't harp on too much about, but obviously restaurants and bars, he's talking about a phase reintroduction of, say, opening to 50% capacity, 75% capacities, like 150 people or less, whichever is less. You're also looking at something like the bar area, maybe open to 10% capacity specified by health departments. Are opening up 50% of bars, and outdoor seating has a lot to do with this stuff. I really like this one, buddy, where he touches on the retail stores. Let me read this verbatim because I think it draws a very nice line of exactly what's going on here, right? So retail stores, it says, retail stores should adopt the models being used at big box retailers like Costco, Home Depot, Walmart, and Lowe's, which actively promote physical distancing in a facility by limiting the number of customers allowed at any given time. Distancing markers should be placed throughout the store and outside where customers may be waiting in line to remind customers to maintain a safe distance from other patrons. It goes on to do some other specific things, but I really like that beginning language, buddy, where it says retail stores should adopt the models being used by big box retailers like Costco, Home Depot. I think what a little bit the subtle undertones that I'm hearing here is, by the way, let's all be for real about this, okay? The only reason why Walmart and Costco and Home Depot and some of these places are open is because they so happen to sell you what's deemed essential things. Now, granted, somebody has to stay open to sell you that stuff, but let's be honest, it doesn't exactly fall within the realm of common sense to say that we should have a massive square footage complex like a Walmart open to everybody while shutting down some of the other mom and pop retailers. Could the mom and pop retailers not do it as well or as reasonably or comfortably as a Walmart could do it? You get what I'm saying? Are their employees less competent? Can they not space as well? Can they not, you know, distance or I don't know, let a certain number of people in at the exact same time? Somebody posted on Facebook the other day that actually owns a small business in retail saying, look, man, one of the only reasons why I'm not open is because I don't sell essential things. But you can certainly go into Walmart and buy a laptop right now if you wanted to. Just so happened because they also sell you water and toilet paper. You know what I'm saying, man? I think that's a little bit of what Glenn Jacobs is touching on is, yes, you have to buy essential products, but at the same time, let's be honest about what we're doing here. Let's be honest about all of this stuff has some voluntary responsibility attached to the back end of it. And if that's the case, then we could probably reopen some of these retail shops if we do it the proper way. We've been doing it the proper way at Home Depot, sort of, okay? We've been doing it the proper way of Walmart, sort of. So if we can take those sort of lessons and apply them at a smaller scale, I think we could get this done, dude. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, this is a similar conversation to the one we were having yesterday about going to church.
Right.
right? Where we're saying, I think what Glenn Jacobs is saying is, I don't know. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. Okay, so this is my interpretation based on my biases. So I'll say that. But what I heard there, my Rorschach test said, if these places can be open, other places can be open. If these places are following rules that society, government, and everyone else accepts as okay in order for business transactions, for money to go from one person to another, then other places should be able to have money go from one person to another if they do the same things, theoretically. And I think it's important to frame it that way, because then if you get any pushback from the businesses that are open, you know that all they're doing is trying to protect their market share and not actually talk about safety. And I think, I don't know, I like the idea of, if going to Home Depot and Walmart is safe, then why isn't going to a game store safe? Why isn't going, I don't know, to a bookstore safe, you know? Why isn't going to a mom and pop retailer of any kind, like a Five and Dime, if we still even have any of those things? Like, why isn't TJ Maxx safe if Home Depot's safe?
Yeah, I'll tell you this much, though, buddy. Norm just said in Facebook here a second ago, saying, I enjoy working from home and I like having Amazon and Instacart deliver my stuff to the door. But if I want to go out, I don't need the government. Sorry, go you mint to approve. That's awesome. Kelly just said, I've never felt unsafe shopping or going anywhere. And I will tell you one thing, buddy. Since this whole shutdown thing has happened, I've never been more happy to have this like customer pickup service in my life. Right. I don't know why I haven't been using this every single time.
You're crazy. I told you to start doing that like 2 years ago.
You did, dude. You did. And I just like, I didn't. And I kept coming on radio, bro, back in the day, and just like venting and lamenting how much I hate going into some of these stores. And I used to say one of my things that I used to not like when I would be on my way home and my wife would really need something for making dinner that night or just something to pick up, and she would say, hey, can you stop by Kroger and get such and such? And obviously, being the great husband that I am, I always would. But when I stopped by Kroger to pick up something, I would go to, dude, it was just like this thing, this like cloud of darkness would just overcome me, bro, where I'd have to walk through aisles and I couldn't figure out what the stupid thing was. And I'd have to go ask somebody. And then when I get to the aisle, and it wouldn't matter what store I was in. I don't know why I'm so inept when it comes to finding things in stores. I think that's a very specific Mr. Henry problem. I recognize that.
No, you can't find things outside of a store.
But it is what
Hey, Mr. Henry, let's go a mile down the road to a place we've been a million times. All right, let me put it in Google real quick. Let me just put it in Google real quick. I give Mr. Henry a hard time about that. I've been doing it my whole life. Before Google existed, I was like, dude, why don't you just carry a map in your car? And he's like, nah, dude. Nah, dude. I can only imagine what you're like in the dang grocery store.
Yeah,
you can't plug macaroni and cheese into the old Google, can you?
Well, since this shutdown, though, dude, I've been starting to realize, like, hey, maybe I should abide by the social distancing thing. I call this stuff voluntary. Maybe I should do it myself as well. And I've been just doing the customer pickup, which is beautiful, bro. It's beautiful. You got to walk 5 feet into a store. Some of them you don't even have to walk into, dude. Home Depot stuff, they have a whole table set up outside in the front of the store, so you have to interact with just a single other human being. This is what I'm talking about. This is some of the stuff I'm saying. There are ways to do this responsibly and reasonably. I'll give you a chance to respond if you want to, Bo, if Sean. If not, I want to pick up on what you said a second ago about this being sort of these standards being set ubiquitous across the board, right? These standards being applied to all things equally and fairly in a legal sense, right? And by that, what I mean, man, is we had a statement finally come out from Attorney General William Barr yesterday, specifically pertaining to religious practices and social distancing. Now, if you don't know what this is in reference to, if you don't know what Attorney General Barr is responding to, there were several stories that came out over the weekend. Let me just read a few of these headlines that we touched on yesterday so you guys can figure out what's going on here. Let's see. American. This is the publication called The New American. Police raid in Mississippi church drive-in services. This is Washington Examiner. Baptist church members given $500 tickets for listening to church services in their cars via radio parking lot. This is the Gateway Pundit. Democrat governor announces plan to record license plates of Easter churchgoers and force them to self-quarantine. We also talked about a Facebook video that was actually documenting some of this stuff yesterday. Sean just mentioned a second ago.
Now, that one I don't as much have a problem with.
I hear you.
saying,
Right.
hey, we saw you at a church service. I mean, that's a little bit disturbing for the government to say we saw you, we recorded your license plate at a church service. But to just hit you up and say, we know you've been around other people. You should probably self-quarantine.
Right.
There's no force there. It's a little bit intrusive, but there's no force there. I have less of a problem with that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I can't wait to hear. I've been wanting to hear this since you told me about it before the show.
Yeah.
That Governor Barr has been giving some guidance. I'm guessing of how the feds would prosecute if they arrested people.
Yeah, and it's more
Isn't
like
that what it's about, Mr. Legal Guy?
Yeah. I think the best way to look at this is sort of like an advisory opinion. Okay, like a state attorney general will come down with an advisory opinion or something. Advisory opinions are sort of like, hey, nothing has really happened yet. We don't have anything in the legal system. We do have some lawsuits going on. Let that be for sure known. I mean, obviously, that was a statement of interest that was issued based upon Mississippi's lawsuits going through. Barr did issue a statement of interest on that. But I would say look at this as an advisory opinion where this isn't a ruling. This isn't it. It's just basic legal guidance that says like, hey, but it's kind of like you're in a car, okay, and you start messing around in the back seat, and the dad says like, hey, if you don't quit messing around, I'm going to turn this car around so quick and make your head spin type thing. That's a little bit of what this language is meant to indicate. Just stop messing around out there, states, or we're going to have to figure out something for you. This is basically what he's saying.
Hold on real quick before you say that. Something I'm worried about is people, something I've been worried about this whole time is people ignoring the feds. And I know that'd be something like 3 to 5 years ago, I would have said that would have been something I'd be excited about, was states ignoring the feds. But I feel like in this time period, it's too dangerous. But I worry about the Justice Department losing some power.
Interesting.
Because he could issue these advisory opinions all day, but they could charge these people with state crimes, and then the feds become irrelevant on that front and lose their effectiveness. So, and I know there's a tough balance of playing tough and being relevant, because if they play tough and people ignore them, then they're irrelevant. But anyway, that's just something I wanted to throw out there. Something I'm worried about in general with a lot of other issues as well is kind of the destabilization of the union a little bit.
Well, and think a little bit about what just happened yesterday. Okay, for a very long time, if not hopefully forever, conservatives / Republicans have always liked to tout this idea that they are limited federal government, that they don't like the idea of federal government imposing their will on the states, that by way of the 10th Amendment or whatever it might be, that look, there's a reason why you can't enforce federal law onto the states, at least not by way of the policing power itself. Okay. Now, this is something that Democrats have never really liked that idea before, or at least they have not espoused it as clearly and strongly as our conservative fellows on the right have. But Shine, to your point, buddy, all day yesterday, what did we hear from these folks on the left, right? What did we hear from Democrats? No, Mr. President. No. Well, granted, a couple of weeks ago, it was certainly within your purview and certainly within your executive power based upon the state of emergency to force states to shut down. But now, dude, no. Now we're 10th Amendment believers. Now we're 10th Amendment believers again, that it's the states' rights, it's the governor's rights in particular to reopen. A sentiment with which I fundamentally agree with, and I think the Constitution does as well. I even think you see some backstepping or backtracking a little bit from Trump today, but it's exactly to your point, Sean, right? Like, I think there's now this sort of resurgence of, I don't know, dare I say, 10th Amendment rights or states' rights that we're all getting behind, maybe because Republicans have always been there, if not namesake only. And now Democrats are finding a reason to believe in this charge again. It's exactly what you're saying, buddy.
It's non-rhetorical. It's non-rhetorical. It's practical support of the 10th Amendment.
Exactly. Exactly.
Does that make sense? Because
right.
because the people who were telling Trump that he didn't have absolute power a couple days ago, the federal government has absolute power. The people who are arguing that were not arguing it from a I believe in the 10th Amendment point of view. They were arguing from a we want to be able to do what we think is best point of view. Even though that is a 10th Amendment argument. The argument is that, the government closest to the people will do best. Let me get some of these comments in and then respond, and then I don't want to bury the lead here on Barr's stuff. But let's see. Norman Tina, the feds is a 4-letter word. Daniel Blanchett.
Good comment.
Let's see. He had a good one here. Except, he says, Shine, except self-quarantine means code for do it or we'll make you. I think that's important too. But
he also said that too, man. I like that comment where he said that you'll win the case later doesn't help while you're locked up in close quarters with other people who made bad choices. Dude, that's right. That's another great point.
And let me throw this out there too. The reason I said I don't like the destabilization of the union in this time period is there are other threats besides our own federal government in the world right now. And the United States is uniquely, I'm not trying to sound like a statist warhawk person, but the United States is uniquely vulnerable right now in a way that, let's see, that we haven't been really. I mean, even in 9/11, we weren't vulnerable. Like the place we live wasn't super vulnerable. That was like something that got through the cracks or whatever. This is like everyone's staying at home. Everyone's in kind of a heightened emotional state. Resources are being depleted. Like, imagine how hard this would be if we were fighting an aggressor. Like, and spending all the money on that. So I worry about threats from without right now because there's a lot of people that'd love to see us fall off the pedestal. And I feel like the destabilization of the union makes us less safe in this time period. In a time of regularness, in a time of peace, yes, dissolution of federal power. But the reason we have a federal government is not because it makes us feel good. It's because it was safer than having these other things. You know, it was mostly about safety. I mean, when people talk about the federal government and they say, what is the role of government? Usually the first things people say is it's the to keep people safe and allow people to safely do business with each other, safely exchange goods, safely assemble, safely exchange thoughts and speech. But anyway, I just wanted to qualify my statement of normally I'm for the dissolution of federal power, but right now it makes me nervous because everybody's kind of for dissolution of federal power because you're either right-leaning and you're always for that anyway, or you're left-leaning and you hate the executive. You know, so everybody's got a reason.
I think these are obviously times where it's the purpose of, not the purpose of, but at least during these times is when you actually stress the edge of those ideological beliefs, right? And it's where you really try and figure out like, okay, what is the, I'll put it this way, Sean. I don't know how many people in their lives have genuinely sat down and questioned what is the purpose of government? And I know that sounds like a super dumb thing to say. I promise you it's not. And people that listen to this program have probably asked themselves that question before. Like, what is the purpose of government? Why can't we just do a lot of this ourselves? Could we do a lot of this ourselves? You know what I'm saying? Do we need some sense of representation? Now, granted, there's 300 something plus 320, 330 million of us out here. So we got to figure out some system of a social compact. But does that look like as big of a system as we have now? I think these particular periods in American life are ones where we can step back and ask those fundamental questions of, all right, man, at a bare minimum, what is the purpose of this big thing, the federal government, i.e., or what people know as the national government, if you will, sitting up there in Washington, D.C., somewhat disconnected from me, making decisions on behalf of me? Like, I know I've sent them up there, but I don't know, bro. Like, how much power do they really need? Do they need this power during these particular times? And I think that's what you're getting to, man, is just basically asking those questions. And that's what William Barr was getting to yesterday, is saying, like, look, man, I know a lot of people are afraid right now, but when it comes down to what your government should and should not be telling you to do, some of this stuff has a very clear line drawn in it, and it always has. It always has in the past. Let me read a little bit of his response, and then we can respond to, hey, man, if we're changing it going forward, what does that look like? This is what he says. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the president has issued guidelines calling on all Americans to do their part to slow the spread of a dangerous and highly contagious virus. Those measures are important because the virus is transmitted so easily from person to person, and because all too often it has life-threatening consequences for its victims. It has the potential to overwhelm healthcare systems when it surges. In exigent circumstances, when the community as a whole faces an impending harm of this magnitude, and where the measures are tailored, that's important right there, okay? I'm reading this. When the measures are tailored to meeting the imminent danger, the Constitution does allow some temporary restrictions on our liberties that would not be tolerated in normal circumstances. Deshaun, that's exactly what you were talking about. That is from William Barr himself. That is the man leading the legal say and say not of this country, saying, look, bro, the Constitution does allow some temporary restrictions on our liberties that would not normally be tolerated in normal circumstances. That's literally the reason why you bring that up a second ago, is to say we are in exigent circumstances right now. So now is the time to draw those lines of where that exigent circumstances meets the line of what is tolerated and not tolerated. Now, importantly, he goes on to say, but, I'm quoting again from William Barr, but even in times of emergency, when reasonable and temporary restrictions are placed on rights, the First Amendment and federal statutory law prohibit discrimination against religious institutions and religious believers. Now, finish this out and think a second ago about how we brought up what Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs was talking about how there needs to be a ubiquitous application. It needs to be the same standard of fairness for everyone across the board. And by everyone, I'm talking corporations, I'm talking small businesses, I'm talking all of it. William Barr goes on to say, thus, government may not impose special restrictions on religious activity that do not also apply to similar non-religious activity. Seems fair enough to me. For example, he says, if a government allows movie theaters, restaurants, concert halls, and other comparable places of assembly to remain open and unrestricted, it may not order houses of worship to close, limit their congregation size, or otherwise impede religious gatherings. Religious institutions must not be singled out for special burdens. He goes on to say a little bit more, and we can get it in a second, but importantly, I think this last paragraph really nails this home here, okay? He says, religion and religious worship continue to be central to the lives of millions of Americans. This is true more so than ever during this difficult time. This pandemic has changed the way Americans live their lives. Religious communities have rallied to the critical need to protect community from the spread of this disease by making services available online and in ways that otherwise comply with social distancing guidelines. The United States Department of Justice will continue to ensure that religious freedom remains protected if any state or local government in their response to COVID-19 singles out, targets, or discriminates against any house of worship for special restrictions. I focused on that last part, buddy, to say he has a strong command of the English language. You got to give him that. And he has a strong command of narrative writing. You also have to give him that. He starts out by saying, echoing what Shine just said a second ago, we are in exigent circumstances right now. And during those times, we have to push for sake of maintaining the unity of this nation. Sometimes we have to push temporary restrictions on our liberties that would not normally be accepted. But he goes on to say, however, importantly, some of those things of the circumstances that we push cannot be taken away, should never be taken away. That is where, dude, I call upon my libertarian friends. I call upon my libertarian brothers and sisters to hold us accountable during these periods of time, right? The ideological strongholds, buddy, that will never give an inch during these times. Some of the ones that you get frustrated with on Facebook right now, some of the ones that are constantly harping about how this is conspiracy takeover of the government, we're losing rights. Those people are arguably as important now than they ever have been before, if not more so, if for nothing else, just to keep you thinking about that. Just to keep it on the edge of your tongue, to think like the fear alone of COVID-19 and the legitimate statistics backing these deaths, that will do enough to let you know we need some version of stability and solidity and solidarity. We need some version of somebody taking control of this stuff. If not for me, then someone else. If not now, then when type thing, right? But going forward, there are things that are such inherent to ourselves that are God-given, bro, that no other man, woman, or collective nature of all of them together could ever take away from me, because it's not given to me by government, right? That's what Barr is talking about here. My right to assembly and my right to religion and my right to associate with the God that I choose is never, ever going to be approved, has been before, or should be going forward, legitimately speaking, by a group of other individuals. It's mine, man. That's mine. It's nobody else's. I think that's what Barr is talking about here when he says, like,
this
look,
is
bro,
beyond our jurisdiction.
it's beyond our jurisdiction. He says, even when we're in times of emergency, even when you come on and hear the news programs talking about if we don't do mitigating factors, 2.5 million people are going to die. That's what they first talked about, right? He says, even when that's going on, even in those emergency circumstances, when you feel like the federal government should be taking over, when normally that wouldn't be tolerated, we cannot allow our First Amendment rights to be discriminated against here on religious reasons or otherwise, man. Right? I'm telling you, this is one more time what I'm saying. pour into your libertarian friends right now, reach out to them, ask them their opinions, especially if you're getting a little bit fearful or if you're finding yourself slipping into a little bit of what they might call statism or otherwise, man, because this is the point we're in right now. This is the point we're in where we have to figure out how to draw these lines of what government can and cannot do, what they can and cannot say, what they can and cannot encroach upon for the sake of keeping us safe. And let's be real, buddy. This is a fundamental argument that was the foundation of this country, okay? Because if the federal government is there for little else other than the safety and well-being and general welfare of its populace. You know what I'm saying, man? I'll kick it to you because I've been harping here for a while, man. If you want some response.
Oh no, I just loved everything you just said there, Mr. Henry. It's so important this is why we say all the time, it's so important to be engaged with what's going on. Because all the time there are things that could affect the future greatly that are happening. There are precedents being set, and not all the time can you do anything about it, right? But it's important for you to remember what's happened, why it's happened, and what should happen based on that in the future. And it's more important now than ever to not have your head in the sand, because people are making big moves. Now, as it comes to William Barr and how he's going to advise people in his department to prosecute certain things, do you have a lot of say over that? No. But aren't you glad that Mr. Henry brought this up and that you know? Because if this is something you could reference in the future and say never again, or the little things that are happening right now, not necessarily the Barr decision, but the things that you see in the news that are the extra safety steps that are beyond the realm of normalcy or more authoritarian in government, it's important to be able to reference those things and say, this is not okay in a regular situation. It was only barely okay in an emergency situation. But you want to be able to have those conversations either during this time or post from a place of being informed. And I don't know. I just talking about these civil liberty issues, the only point I wanted to bring up, Mr. Henry, is it's important to be engaged, because look at what we're talking about. We're talking about the right to assemble, to worship. Right. Or I mean, right to assembly in any kind of way, really, because if you can't do it to worship, if there's a bias against what isn't sacred, if that's not sacred, then what would they allow? What is the thing you can't touch, the speech you can't touch, the assembly you can't touch, if you can't touch religious worship?
Norm actually says in Facebook a little bit ago, saying, does the Constitution allow, in a similar vein, obviously not talking about religious ceremonies, goodness, not talking about religious places of worship, meeting or congregations or anything like that, but he goes on a similar topic of what we brought up yesterday. Norm asked, does the Constitution allow for federal martial law? Trump is arguing with media about his power, but he is allowing the states to manage. Deep state is the enemy. And I think that's obviously a lot of the question. It says, except where we're Daniel Snowden says in Facebook, there is a 1.5 amendment that says, except when we're scared. I get what he's saying.
Well, hey, not only is that a disclaimer for the U.S. government, that's a human disclaimer. Well, all rules only exist while we are agreeing to play the game. Exactly. When the game feels too dangerous, we obviously change the rules. Or a better way of saying it is, when the game isn't working, when we can't play, then we change the rules. That is the underlying human assumption. And honestly, it's the underlying American assumption about government, is that when things don't work, we change them. We don't keep doing the same things over and over again like monarchies of the Middle Ages. We tried to make this government a mixture of stability and flexibility. And that's obvious in our amendment process. I mean, so many things have changed.
Well, and obviously to your point too, and it's also going to Norm's question a second ago when Daniel Snowden says in Facebook, like, look, the amendments don't apply. Obviously what he's getting at is, if we're scared enough, then all of a sudden this Constitution stuff goes out the window. And I understand it. I get the notion behind it, but it goes to Norm's question of like, okay, so how much power does the federal government really have to enact something like federal martial law? And just by way of simple history alone, I think it's a little bit disingenuous. And I want to be fair here to Daniel Snowden's argument, but it's a little bit disingenuous disingenuous here to claim that just because someone is scared, now all of a sudden you throw constitutional principles out the window. Because let's be legitimate, man. Like there's very clear reasons, very clear lines of delineation that say like there's an actual state of emergency and there's not an actual state of emergency. And within these declared points of state of emergency, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, this is what we've said, whether you call it tyrannical or not, I would personally agree. I would. I'm just telling you where the situation is at hand, given precedent, legal precedent, given history, the historicity of our country. Under certain points of state of emergency, man, the executive branch tends to have more power than we would ever really want to give it. Right. But that's essentially what ends up happening. As the state of emergency ends up going, you centralize power more and more. And I get the fear, dude. I do. As you centralize power more and more, the fear is that you never end up giving that power back because goodness gracious, dude, look what happened to the Emperor, right? I mean, like, what was it? The last one they had, they gave him power everywhere and then he never gave it back and then he ends up getting murdered. Okay. So what I'm saying, man, is I do think it's a little bit disingenuous. And I don't know Daniel Snowden in particular, but I want to be fair to his argument because I think he's being for real here when he says something like, look, you can't allow your fear to overwhelm your beliefs so much. And now all of a sudden you have this new principle of what the federal government should be in your life. I get that, man. I do. But
That's
it also can't be this
you got to
thing
be reasonable. You got to take in
do.
facts. You got to not just be driven emotionally. You got to think about things. You got to put the animal brain down and try to use the reason for a minute.
Right. And he goes on to say, look, you're saying that that tyranny is always okay if you let them be tyrants now. Well, not necessarily. Okay. Because again, I have a personal feeling that I know everyone loves Abraham Lincoln, man. I don't necessarily like the guy all that much, at least for some of the things that were done. And this is a very large point of contention for myself and a lot of other people when I say that. And I say that again because of similar stuff that's happening now. Abraham Lincoln, then he removed habeas corpus, your right to a fair trial, right? Like he wouldn't let journalists print what they wanted to. Like if you're crossing certain state lines, just because you're crossing certain state lines, you're arrested immediately. Now that stuff happened in this country. Now, granted, we were in the midst of a civil war. So that's what I'm saying, bro. Like that's what Attorney Barr is getting at here. And I'm trying to approach this conversation, Sean, in the sense of a legal understanding as to what we had in the past and what we are right now. And I think Barr is even saying like we are nowhere near the exigent circumstances yet of what we had in the Civil War. But those things have happened in the past before. We do have legal precedent to show that sometimes in a genuine state of emergency, the federal government or the executive branch has far more power than you would like them to have. Now, my assessment on that is if you don't like that happening, we can change that. We always could change that. That's one of the beauties of a constitutional republic, which is why I like to call it a constitutional republic. If you want to change that, you elect people to re-legislate it and change the ability for that to happen. Now, you also have to be able to deal with the ramifications on the back end of when that does change. If something pops off and we don't have a centralized version of power or centralized version of government, and I'm talking pure Federalist Papers here right now, okay? I'm talking pure anti-Federalist Federalist Papers 101 stuff here of the reason why we formed a central government as opposed to letting 50 different states figure it out on their own. The states cede power to a central government for the protection and general welfare of the rest of its people, right? And I think that's what's going on. Back to Norm's original point, though, man, is my personal assessment of this is, and this is just me personally, my personal assessment when Trump comes out and says that he has total authority, I personally believe that is flat empirically wrong. It's incorrect. I do not believe that President Trump has total authority, and I'm using his terms, total authority to force states to reopen, okay? And I say that, let me use simple analogies here, okay? On a Republican side, everyone likes to tout this idea now that we have Second Amendment sanctuaries. On the Democrat side, everyone likes to tout this idea now that that you have sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. Part of the reason why that's allowable in this country, or think about states that allow, say, marijuana. Marijuana, by the way, is still illegal at a federal level. We all realize that, yeah? It's legal at state levels because the way our Constitution works is if you have a federal law, the federal government cannot force a state government to enforce that law. They can't say, you can't pass a federal level and then force Tennessee police departments or Tennessee sheriffs to go enforce that law on Tennessee citizens. If you want to use the DEA to go bust a bunch of weed distilleries in Colorado, you can do that. You can use federal power and federal authority to go enforce federal law, but you can't use the federal government to enforce federal or to force state governments to do it on their own. Only the states have that power. And that is the difference in my mind between plenary power and enumerated powers, okay? Plenary powers essentially are state governments. They can do whatever they want to do aside from the few things that we say they cannot do. Right? That's because the states had the power to begin with. They came from the power of the people. Now, some people don't even like the idea that states have power. Some people want the power just to remain in individuals. I get that. Okay. But the smaller you can make this, the better off it's going to be. In general, plenary power is the idea that states can do whatever they want to do, except the things that we, the people, tell them they cannot do. Conversely, the federal government can only do the very select things we tell them they can do. It's not just semantic, buddy. It's not. The enumerated powers of the federal government are supposed to be very clear, very small, extremely well defined, where the state government is like, y'all handle all the rest. So that's where I come down on the side of saying, I just don't think we are to the level yet that demands these exigent circumstances. We are not to the level of a state of emergency yet. The latest projections I saw said that the deaths could be somewhere between 60 and 80,000. That's a bad flu season. That is not Civil War times. We are not to the exigent circumstances yet where a president has, quote unquote, total authority to force the states to do anything, in my opinion. And that means shut down or open up. Right? Now, I personally still believe also that you would have to get a heck of a lot worse. Possibly, I mean, not just demonstrably worse. I'm talking so much worse further down the road than we are right now that I don't even know what that line looks like before I would ever want a president to be able to have the power to say, you guys have to do something here. Now, again, if we're invaded by a foreign country, if we have a civil war, we're talking something like that to protect the nation itself. To protect the city-state itself, maybe then and only then. And I'm stepping on a little bit of line here, buddy, because that's maybe not something our Republican friends want to hear, our Trump supporters want to hear, but that's where I come down on. That's my answer to Norm's question is, look, buddy, I hear what Trump is saying. I think he was saying that he has total authority, maybe just to get a reaction and a rise out of some of these journalists, maybe just to justify on the back end what he did a few weeks earlier. Maybe that was the whole thing. I know I'm playing 3D chess here with Trump and people don't like that, but maybe he said something to the extent of, look, I'm going to get some kickback here in a couple of weeks because a month ago, I didn't force these states to shut down. So maybe what I'll do is I'll force them to open back up. You guys will then say, I don't have that power. So then you're stuck in your own weird sort of hypocritical square dance. Okay. So do I have the power or don't I have the power? Because now y'all are kind of
Mr. Henry,
journalists.
I think you just solved that Sudoku puzzle. I think that's exactly what happened. You're a genius. That's exactly. We talked about it yesterday. I said the only reason Trump ever says that kind of stuff is because he doesn't want to talk about something else. And the sooner these stupid journalists learn that, the better off we'll all be. We're all better off when people are smart enough to see through people's, what do you call it? Ways to ignore things, ways to get around answering questions, whatever he's doing when he does that. I mean, I'm not mad at him for it. It's up to those journalists who want to get the answers that they want. But he just plays them like a fiddle every time. And I guarantee you, you're right. Mr. Henry, you're a genius. He totally said, I have the power to open up so that they can say he didn't have that power, so he can't get in trouble for closing down. He's been trying, I mean, I'm going to be honest, a fair critique from the Democratic side is he has been trying to mitigate the, and I say he, President Trump, has been trying to mitigate, it's obvious he's been trying to mitigate how much blame he'll receive for anything.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's election year. I mean, I guess that's fair, or at least should have been obvious that would happen. But this is definitely a tactic for that. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't take what people say seriously. I think another critique that's totally fair from the people who don't like Trump is people who do like him find a way to justify things he says sometimes that they would never like anyone to say. Like, oh, he's just playing 3D chess, or, oh, he's just trying to make them upset. Something I've said all the time, when people who are in power use rhetoric, it matters. It has implications. Things that presidents say are almost kind of written on stone in the United States. And people reference things people say, even in press conferences, even in off-the-cuff comments. Everything is important when a president says it. So if you have a president of the United States who, in a very important, focused time, says the federal government has absolute authority, what's a president 50 years from now to say, remember when President Trump said the federal government has absolute authority? He was saying that during a time of crisis. Look at the crisis we're in now. So, you have to, as much as we talk about, you have to praise rhetoric from people that you don't like when they use rhetoric that you like, because you want them to keep using it. You do have to hold accountable people you do like using rhetoric that you don't like. You can't just not say something about it. And I will say, for the record, President Trump, you do not have absolute authority. I mean, just as a matter of practicality and reality.
Right.
Just as a matter of practicality, you only have as much authority as people allow you to have. It's people have to submit to authority. You don't just get automatic authority over a human mind. I mean, that's just practical reality of life. Just like we've been talking about volunteerism. There's no way they can enforce a quarantine through force on all these Americans. Here in New York City or even in Montana, there's just not enough manpower. State, federal, and local, there's not enough. It requires volunteerism. It requires people to submit to the authority, because you only get the authority people give you. So he doesn't have absolute authority. But anyway,
Exactly.
I'll just throw that out there. I just want to throw that out there so people, I want to stay consistent, and I want the show to stay consistent as well.
Well, dude, I mean, look, the even playing devil's advocate for the sake of playing devil's advocate is extremely healthy right now. I think that's one of the best things people can do right now. I mean, shoot, man, even when it comes to, questions of spirituality or otherwise, man, C.S. Lewis would always say that one of the healthiest things that he always did was try and question his own faith, to try and figure out how to grow in his own faith, right? To try and figure out what he has faith in, what he has genuine beliefs in, what he can actually hang his objective hat on, man. That's what these times are for. Norm said in Facebook a second ago, I agree, Mr. Henry, Trump doesn't want to be a monarch, but occasionally his fights with the mainstream media gets him in a bad soundbite. Yeah. And look, Daniel brings up a good point too. He says subterfuge and then misdirection. Kelly says he's just playing with the press and it's hilarious. Yeah, that part is true.
And it is hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what makes it so hard to critique.
Right.
Is it's so funny. And also, from people who've been making fun of people politically on the other side through comedic means for years, it's kind of impressive. Like when you watch it, you're like, man, he really got their goat better than I probably could have. Look at him go. But you still have to take what the president says seriously. You can't say it's just 3D chess or 4D chess. You got to take it seriously. And that wasn't cool that he said he had absolute authority.
But dude, I hate to. I got so hyped about what you were saying. I kept jumping in on you. I didn't mean to. What you just said a second ago, you have to take what he says seriously. Let me finish the show by playing this clip right here, because it's the exact point that Shine just made. All right, here's the clip that I'm talking about. Give me 2 seconds. Let me pull this thing up, sharing screen, whatnot.
Hey, right, no problem. Just take your time. No need to be in too big of a hurry. I want to thank everybody for watching us today so far. Remember to like and share the video. It really helps. I mean, weirdly enough, it adds like 200 people when you share. When you share, it adds like 200 views or so. When you like, I just like seeing people's names pop up on the stream chat where it's like so-and-so's liked the video, or so-and-so has followed Real News, or so-and-so has shared the video. So make sure your name will pop up right on the screen. So like and share the video. But Mr. Henry, if you're ready, I'm ready, buddy.
Yeah, actually, as I was saying, I'm ready now. This thing is loading, but just to set this up, I was needing to set it up at some point, anyways, man. Just to set this up where we're coming from. So Simon just said you have to take what he says seriously. It can't all be just this aspect of playing 3D chess. It can't all be this thing of like Trump is just, I don't know, just playing with media or something. Because I will say this much, buddy, whether you like it or not, it is undeniable that he is at least a master manipulator of media. Whether you like the outcome of it or not, doesn't matter. Whether you appreciate him doing that or not, doesn't matter. Whether you agree with the end goal, doesn't matter. The simple fact of the matter is he does have a masterful understanding of how to manipulate the media. I don't even know if it's to his benefit. I'm not even making that argument, Shine. I'm just saying it does happen. And here's what Shine's talking about, all right? So just a few days back, we played this clip. I think it was on Friday of last week, or maybe just yesterday or Monday of this week. I can't remember.
I think it was just yesterday.
Was it yesterday? But we played this clip of Trump just messing around with the media, talking about, I don't know, maybe I'll take away the funding for the World Health Organization. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm not saying anything about it right now. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. At the point, it was like a leverage tool, buddy. It was a negotiation tool. It was like a signaling or a call or chumming the waters a little bit. It was an instantaneous pull of the room sitting in front of him. And it was also a thing of where Trump does this a lot, where like you don't know if you should take him seriously, and then all of a sudden he drops the bomb and delivers something like this yesterday.
In my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus. Everybody knows what's going on there. American taxpayers provide.
I love that little 2 seconds.
Everybody knows what's going on there.
Yeah, man.
See, that's why you can't, it's so hard to critique him, because you're like, wow, what a move. What a burn. I mean, politics hasn't been this interesting without people firing guns ever. I mean, dude, honestly, that is so hilarious. I mean, I don't know. I mean, isn't it weird that there's all these things like the United Nations, NATO, WHO, things like that when you were in your 20s and you were learning about small government and how things work, you're like, man, well, we don't even really need those things. And people said, those will always be around. We'll always fund them. That's just part of life. It's so weird to hear someone say, hey, this organization screwed up and America's thinking about whether or not we're going to keep sending them money. Except for this is saying we're not sending money until there's a review. That's incredible. I wonder if the WHO fired people yesterday.
I know.
Because it's got to be like over 70% of the funding comes to the United States, like everything else, so... Weird. What a weird time.
Let me play this one more time, man, because this is just something I love. I don't know if, again, some might say this is perpetual foot and mouth syndrome. I think this is Trump's. I do too, buddy. I think
everybody does know what's going on there.
Yes.
Everybody knows the Chinese government is a bunch of like weird satanic Satanists. I mean, the CCP, the Communist Party, not the people of China, but the Communist Party. I mean, they have mobile execution vans. They're putting monks and chopping them up and selling their organs and stuff like that, and not charging them with any crimes. They have all these Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps. They have a social credit system like that episode of Black Mirror, where if you screw up enough, you can't ride the train or get into your own apartment building. Right. I mean, it is hell on earth over there. And everyone knows the suicide nets for a Foxconn. Everyone knows what's going on there. Now, what's hilarious and why it's novel is we've never had a president say it.
Yes,
exactly. And this isn't the first time or anything, but like, goodness gracious, he's not a hero for calling a spade, but thank goodness he is, because everyone does know what's going on over there.
But it is a little bit, I'm like you, I'm not going to call it like a noble endeavor, don't get me wrong, but I am going to say it's a very, very healthy thing in politics, especially right now, buddy, because I'm going to play this clip again, and it's look, some might say, well, Trump has no filter. Dude, isn't that a benefit? Haven't everyone in this country been begging? I'm talking like on hands and knees pleading for more transparency in government. There are no question marks with this guy. Okay, like whatever he thinks at any given moment, he's going to tell you. Now, whether he's manipulating media or not, I don't necessarily know. That plays into a part of this. But this aspect of not having a filter, pretend you're reading through this transcript, and do you not do the same thing in your own head, Sean? Right? Do you not do the exact same thing when you're reading through and you're like, shoot, everybody knows what's going on there?
That's why, in his own weird savant way, he's a genius, because that is the point. It's what makes comedians good. What makes comedians good is when they're describing a situation and they can tell you what you think about it.
Right.
And it makes you laugh because it makes you uncomfortable that someone would know what you're thinking about something. But the reason it feels good is because everyone would think that. So it becomes archetypal, which I won't get into all that stuff, but like it's just solid good comedian work. It's solid good communication work. And it really, I know this is going to sound strange to everybody, but it means his level of empathy is super high. If he's able to say, this is what everyone would think about it, that's literally what empathy is when you can put yourself in other people's shoes. And he must be the genius of putting himself in other people's shoes. That probably also has a lot of negative impacts, but that's why it feels good when he does that stuff. Because like you said, we're all thinking it. And it's nice to have someone who represents us who's, whether we're all thinking good things or not, at least he knows what we're thinking. Because I felt disconnected from the past. Most of the presidents of my lifetime, they felt like way far away up on the hill, where he's just like in the computer making me laugh.
Norm just said in Facebook a second ago, all you need is the drop in the thug glasses at the end. It's a little bit true. Let me play this clip and just imagine that here. Someone should make that a memeable version of right after he says, like, yeah, we all know what's happening there. Just like the dang and
Hey, by the way, Daniel Blanchard said 25% of the WHO funding is in the U.S. I overestimated it quite a bit. So
right?
That's still a lot. I'm sure they fired some people yesterday if they just canceled payments. But anyway.
Yeah, let me play a little bit more of this. Here we go.
The coronavirus, everybody knows what's going on there. American taxpayers provide between $400 million and $500 million per year to the WHO. In contrast, China contributes roughly $40 million a year, and even less. As the organization's leading sponsor, the United States has a duty to insist on full accountability. One of the most dangerous and costly decisions from the WHO was its disastrous decision to oppose travel restrictions from China and other nations. They were very much opposed to what we did. Fortunately, I was not convinced and suspended travel from China, saving untold numbers of lives. Thousands and thousands of people would have died. Had other nations likewise suspended travel from China, countless more lives would have been saved.
And I didn't even notice the time here, Sean. It started 10:04. We probably got to wrap the show up, man, unfortunately, because I was just getting too lost. And what a good time we were having. What a good show it was.
Well, I mean, it's up to you, buddy. I mean, I don't know if you got a bunch of work to do or whatever. I mean, I know I do, but you know,
well, I did want to end with some of the comments here, though, man. Let's see. We did read the thing from Norm. Daniel said a second ago, where did this go? Just need to drop in the thug glasses. Said, right. Yeah. Norm said it's almost did it as good a job as the because you'd be in jail to the Hillary comment saying if you were president or something. Remember that?
He didn't beat that. That's
still one of the
coup de grace. That was when he did that. That was like Oh, that was like a big juicy steak cooked at medium rare, served right in front of. That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen when he said, "I know you'd be in jail." That was so good.
I do want to respond though. Daniel said he did a great job of locking her up, though, didn't he? I assume, obviously, sarcastically, he's making that comment. But to that comment, a good point to end the show with here, man, because there's some stuff in the show notes about this. Two different stories that are coming up pertaining to what Daniel just said about Trump doing a good job of locking Hillary up. The DOJ did just announce this week that they were refusing to sign on to, say, the executive immunity, if you will, or any sense of immunity that Hillary Clinton's wanting to use during the depositions that she's going through right now. All right, pertaining to misclassification or misplacing of emails and all that other stuff that came up in the past. That stuff is still going on, if you didn't realize. And the DOJ is refusing to sign on giving her any out, whereas previous DOJs did just that. Not just that, but much, much more to allow her to have legal outs. I'm talking having her personal advisor sit in the room beside her, answering questions on her behalf while she was being interviewed by FBI agents. That is not an interview. That is not a deposition in any normal sense of the word, where she doesn't have to actually respond to questions, all right? The DOJ has now said they're refusing to allow her to do that again. And also, one other thing I would point to as well, again, not exactly going to the idea of doing much about putting, lock her up type thing. But this is another important story we didn't get to touch on yesterday. I would implore the audience, if you have time, go check this out. At least check out the portions that I pulled in the show notes here for you at the end. AG Parr just signaled that things are about to get ugly for the Russian collusion team. This is essentially coming down from Durham's investigation.
You're the guy with the gun.
That's ongoing here.
The person who do anything.
It's going on. This is coming on from Durham's investigation that's continued going on here, talking about obviously the FBI investigation of President Trump started a while back, went into his presidency as well. The IG Horowitz report came out and said, dude, there are some major problems here. We might have had legal justification to start start this investigation in Carter Page and George Papadopoulos and all those players, but we had no IG Horowitz said this, but we had no justification for the continued renewal of these FISA court applications, all right? And now what Barr is confirming as of yesterday's interview, saying IG Horowitz was an investigator. He did not have a capacity of prosecuting any of these things. He's looking up information, okay? We have prosecutorial power, and Durham over there has prosecutorial power. The things that he is stumbling upon now is showing that there possibly wasn't even justification to start that investigation, let alone the renewals going forward. Anyways, the point being is it's looking worse and worse for a lot of this stuff that was previous DOJ controlled, and it might be looking worse for a little bit of Hillary Clinton too, by way of some evidence. Got to end this thing out right now. 10:08 in the morning. I think the music may be playing. I'm not really sure. We will be back tomorrow doing it big for another edition of Real News. Love all y'all. We'll see you soon.